our third year for the 2020's brand new decade, and with that said, it's time to talk about my top 10 favorite films so far for the 2020s in this decade. Now, if you want to know my favorite films from the previous decade, you can find that video up above in the card below. I did that a couple years ago, but I thought it'd be fun to start rounding out and talking about my favorite films so far in this decade, and I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section, so make sure to leave your thoughts down there. Hit that like and subscribe button. We'll be updating this every single year as films get added from each year, because there's always some magnificent ones. And again, without further ado, let's get into this list. Every list, I do have 10 honorable mentions that I do want to talk about, just because there is countless movies that I have loved through each decade, and this is my list so far. So just remember that some of your favorite films might not end up on here, but if I am missing one, please let me know so I can go check it out. Just to run through these really fast, we have No Time to Die, One Night in Miami, Defy Bloods, RRR, Glass Onion, The Banshees of Inisherin, Spider-Man No Way Home, Palm Springs, Tenet, and Soul. Those 10 honorable mentions were just randomly taken off. They're not in any specific order, but my top 10, let's get to my number 10. My number 10 is Mass. Mass for me was probably and easily one of the most depressing and emotional films that I've seen in a long time. It's a film that deserved a lot more at the Oscars that year. It deserved a lot more love just in general. When I saw it at Sundance, I was completely blown away by the tension that two parents and their conversation that can lead to. It's one of those films that for me, when you watch it, you just know that you're watching something special. I found that Jason Isaacs' performance in here was top tier. I found that Martha Plimpton should absolutely have been nominated that year for Best Supporting Actress. In fact, I still contend she should have won that year. I love this movie wholeheartedly. If you still have not watched this movie, you absolutely should. I think the last time I remember it was streaming on Hulu. If it's not, look up the app, just watch, type it in there. You'll probably be able to find it somewhere where you can either rent it or watch it, and I highly recommend that you do, because it is one of the most underrated films so far of this decade, as well as one of my favorites. Just be prepared to cry! Oh shit, I was not prepared for that. At my number 9, we have Another Round. Mads Mikkelsen, a movie of his has to be on this top 10 list, and my favorite international movie so far for this decade is Another Round. It's kind of The Hangover, but if you took The Hangover and made it a little bit more depressing and dramatic, and it actually touches on all these school teachers and how they really much go on this experiment to see how does alcohol and being drunk affect their lives on a daily basis, and does the darkness of that lie with drinking and obsession with alcohol and being drunk and being in that state of feeling of high, to where can you function, can you not? There's these excellent touches of thematics that are very important to our society today, but as well, it's a very widely entertaining movie that is, again, very emotional at the same time, and Mads Mikkelsen, his performance is absolutely incredible in here, and if you haven't seen it yet, you're missing the best dance sequence so far, right next to RRR. My number 8, we have The Green Knight. For me, A24 has pushed out some amazing movies over the last countless years, and The Green Knight is actually one of A24's best movies in my effect. I think this is one of those films that when you look at this King Arthurian tale and the way that David Lowery is absolutely able to discuss it and showcase it, is one of the most surprising films that I saw last year specifically. It was one of my favorites as well. The way that you look at all the grand performances, the way that all the cinematography and all the world and everything is built up in such a technical level. At the same time, it's a Christmas movie as well, and I think that's something that people forget about. But The Green Knight for me is just one of the most unique movies of this entire decade, and it's one that I've countlessly thought about and gone back to, specifically to dissecting its symbolism as well as dissecting its story it's trying to tell. Now, my number 7 is Everything Everywhere All at Once. Now, this film is fresh in my mind. I've seen it this year, and I think over the next few years it'll probably stand the test of time and grow even higher on this list. The films that you watch and you go, this is why I love the movies. This is one of the best films I've ever seen. It's also one of the most original films. If you've never seen the Daniels' first film, The Swiss Army Man, which is also one of the most unique films I've ever seen, ever since I knew that they were doing this movie, I was instantly hooked. I honestly think Michelle Yeoh probably gives one of her best performances of her entire career, as well as Ke Huy Quan, who I'm a huge fan of from the Goonies and Indiana Jones. It's great to see that he came back, got a role like this, and was just excellent in it all, and honestly should be the best supporting actor winner for this year. Also, it's Stephanie Hsu, who for me I think gives one of the most underrated supporting performances of the year. Looking at this movie and seeing how it can combine action, comedy, thrilling, sci-fi, multiverse, and even drama, while all centering it on a mother-daughter story. It is one of the most fascinating movies that really touches on the thematics of what is important in life, as well as entertaining you in all aspects. I was entertained, I was laughing my ass off. At the same time, I was getting very emotional. Who knew two rocks could make you cry? My number 6 is The Suicide Squad. This comic book movie absolutely blew my mind away. I knew it was gonna be good from the trailers, and it's James Gunn doing it. You know it's gonna be at least entertaining. But as a massive Suicide Squad comic book fan, I was looking forward to this film heavily. You have a great cast. You got King Shark, one of my favorite characters from the comics. You got Starro being the villain, and again, that goes on and on. It's a reboot of that original film that absolutely sucked. And it was just a breath of fresh air for the comic book genre. That year alone, it was my favorite film that I saw the most times in theaters. I think I saw it about 13 times in theaters, and I could not get enough of it. And I seem to have been one of the few people that had seen it in theaters. And then when it was on HBO Max, and then when it came out, I just kept rewatching and rewatching it. It's an instantly rewatchable movie, and I arguably think it is James Gunn's second best movie yet. I laugh, I somewhat get even emotional for some of these characters, and I just love the action. James Gunn's pacing is firing on all cylinders, and this is one of the most widely entertaining comic book movies that we have ever gotten. I love this film. Speaking about films that I love, but most people probably do not, is at my number 5 is Babylon. The more I think on Babylon, the more I love it. The more that I've seen it about 3 times now, the more I love it. I think this is absolutely a misunderstood masterpiece that I think people will go back and revisit in the years to come and absolutely see what we are getting here. It's The Wolf of Wall Street meets Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, clearly enough, and it's Damien Chazelle's, again, another love letter to the stars of a different period of Hollywood, as well as showing off the debauchery that had happened during Hollywood. It takes no punches. It shows the wide range of everything that you're supposed to see within this time period, and I thoroughly loved what Babylon was all about. Margot Robbie is absolutely incredible in this role. Brad Pitt is freaking star-studded. I mean, you look at Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a film that also deals with stars and kind of them wondering what is their purpose now in life. The thing that I love about Babylon is it does take it in a more dramatic way than I was even expecting, because you are having that crazy debauchery, insane vibe from The Wolf of Wall Street, and that insanity runs through. But the heart of the story is, of course, is with Diego Calva. The soul of it is, of course, with Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt's characters. And truly enough for me, Brad Pitt seeing a star kind of coming out of the silent movie era and going to the talkies and wondering, can I still act? Margot Robbie kind of being abused through the Hollywood, being pulled in, chewed up, and spit back out, and Diego Calva kind of falling into that same sense. There's so much stuff to analyze in here, and I get deeply emotional in here, specifically in the last 10 minutes when you get this beautiful montage that, well, I won't spoil for people who have not seen Babylon yet, but you absolutely should. Before we get to my top 4, guys, make sure to leave your thoughts down below. Hit that like and subscribe button. And I really cannot emphasize enough. Leave your ranking down below. I want to read your guys' thoughts on what your top 10 favorite films so far for the decade are. My number 4 is Dune Part 1. I cannot wait for part 2. It's one of my most anticipated films for 2023, and Denis Villeneuve is personally my favorite director working right now and my second favorite of all time. Each and every one of his movies I've actually found to be a masterpiece, and Dune is no exception. The way that he brings to life Frank Herbert's novel is one of the most unique and realized ways that I've ever seen when watching a book adaptation to film. It completely looks like it came right off the page, and I can't wait to see what he does with part 2. The casting is exquisite, the production design is insane, the performances are amazing, and Timothée Chalamet gives one of his best performances yet. Oscar Isaac's a standout. Rebecca Ferguson, I would have nominated for Best Supporting Actress last year. Dave Bautista looks great. Josh Brolin looks great. Jason Momoa gave his best damn performance. And Denis Villeneuve probably directed the hell out of this movie and probably gave his best direction yet. I think he makes a thrilling movie that, while it does feel the 2 hours and 25 minutes, it moves. And every single time I've rewatched this film, I just get transported to Arrakis, and it is one of the best theatrical experiences I've ever had. And Dune is the reason that I'm reminded why I love movies. At my number 3 now is 9 Days. Talk about a movie that I saw at Sundance that I had no expectations for. I wasn't even going to go see this one, but someone offered me a free ticket, went and saw it, and bawled my eyes out, and became one of my favorite films from 2020 when I initially saw it. I don't think it actually released till 2021 though, but this film features some of the best performances of this decade so far. Winston Duke deserved an Oscar nomination. Zazie Beetz deserved an Oscar nomination. The directing, the writing, all of that deserved a nomination, an Academy nomination, if not a win. This is a movie that focuses on a guy who pretty much interviews souls to see who goes on to the living and who does not. That insane discussion on the thematics of life and what is important in life and who should be sent and what does life mean. What happens if life ends so suddenly? What if life doesn't end so suddenly? What are these certain thoughts and choices that we make through our lives? These are certain things that we should look into. And 9 Days really much makes you look at your entire life as a whole. And it is one of the best movies that I have seen this entire decade. And honestly, when the decade ends, it might be my number one. I just, the whole thought and fathom of just one guy interviewing a bunch of souls to decide who goes on to the living is like one of the most fascinating ideas I've ever seen in a Hollywood film yet. Now, my number two, we have The Batman. This is the best comic book movie that I've seen since Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and it as well as one of the most accurate comic book films that I've ever seen in my entire life. The Batman is personally my favorite Batman film. I think it is a perfect movie. I've seen it about 5 times, and I am addicted to this film. I love how Matt Reeves really crafted and created a Gotham City that feels so lived in. Robert Pattinson, for me, is a definitive Batman. Bruce Wayne, I'm still waiting on. I need to see a little bit more of that, but we didn't get enough of him. This is full-on a Batman movie. And the way that it's framed in this gritty underbelly of Gotham City, a city that feels lived in. It's the best interpretation of Gotham City that we've gotten so far. And even adding in there, when you look at Paul Dano's performance, Zoe Kravitz, and everyone else, specifically even Colin Farrell, everyone gives some of the best performances of their entire careers in this movie, and Matt Reeves directs the hell out of it and probably directed his best direction yet. Not much more to say than that the fact that this movie was my most anticipated film of all time and the fact that it met it, I cannot wait for the second film. Who knows when we'll actually get that second movie, but I'm clamoring for it. First movie was a masterpiece. My number one for this entire decade so far for the 2020s, it is Avatar: The Way of Water. Now, maybe this is a recency bias. Maybe I'm just high on Pandora and have that post-Pandora depression, but the first Avatar film was a huge film for me, specifically in growing up. I grew up on that film. I love that movie, and that experience I saw in the theaters was one of the most wildly entertaining films that I'd seen ever. Went back to see the re-release this year and then have seen Avatar 2 so far 6 times. I plan on seeing it a couple more before it leaves theaters, and it is, again, one of the best theatrical experiences ever. Take away the 3D, this film still works for me, but I do say if you can see it in 3D IMAX or 3D Dolby Digital, that is the way to see it. The 3D actually brings this film to life in a more nuanced way, but even I watched it without the 3D, and it looks still gorgeous. The best visual effects that I've ever seen in my life. Love Jake Sully and the Tyrese family and what they really bring about here and all the specialties of it all. It's one of those brilliant and thought out families to the point where I love each and every one of them and I feel for them. I feel for Jake Sully. I think Sam Worthington gives probably his best performance. I think Zoe Saldana is incredible in this role, and I think Avatar: The Way of the Water is, you've heard that word before on this list, a masterpiece. It's my masterpiece. It's the Avatar film I wanted, and I can't wait for Avatar 3. James Cameron shows how to make a sequel, and after watching this movie, I'm like, give me it all. I would rather have a ton of Pandora Avatar movies than 37 MCU films a year. And I genuinely mean that. As much as I love Marvel, as much as I love DC, I love Pandora so much, and I love Avatar, and I see why James Cameron is inflicting his whole entire career on this universe. That's my top 10 films so far for this brand new decade. Let me know down below what your guys' thoughts are. These are 2 years, 2 years altogether, 2020, 2021, and 2022, so I guess technically 3 years overall. Let me know down below what your guys' thoughts are. Hit that like and subscribe button, and of course, until next time, stay class.